Anselmus Proslogium, or Discourse on the Existence of God. Chapter 9. How the all-just and supremely just God spares the weak, and justly pities the weak. He is better who is good to the righteous and the weak than he who is good to the righteous alone. Although God is supremely just, the source of his compassion is hidden. God is supremely compassionate because he is supremely just. He saves the just because justice goes with them. He frees sinners by the authority of justice. God spares the weak out of justice. For it is just that God, than whom none is better or more powerful, should be good even to the weak, and should make the weak good. If God ought not to pity, he pities unjustly, but this it is impious to suppose. Therefore God justly pities. But how dost thou spare the weak, if thou art all just and supremely just? For how, being all just and supremely just, dost thou aught that is not just? Or what justice is that, to give him who merits eternal death everlasting life? How, then, gracious Lord, good to the righteous and the weak, canst thou save the weak, if this is not just, and thou dost not aught that is not just? Or, since thy goodness is comprehensible, is this hidden in the unapproachable light wherein thou dwellest? Truly, in the deepest and most secret parts of thy goodness is hidden the fountain whence the stream of thy compassion flows. For thou art all just and supremely just, yet thou art kind even to the weak, even because thou art all supremely good. For thou wouldst be less good if thou wert not kind to any weak being. For he who is good both to the righteous and the weak is better than he who is good to the weak alone, and who is good to the weak both by punishing and sparing them is better than he who is good by punishing them alone. Therefore thou art compassionate, because thou art all supremely good, and although it appears why thou dost reward the good with goods and the evil with evils, yet this at least is most wonderful, why thou, the all and supremely just, who lacks nothing, bestowest goods on the weak and on those who are guilty toward thee. The depth of thy goodness, O God, the source of thy compassion appears, and yet is not clearly seen. We see whence the river flows, but the spring whence it arises is not seen. For it is from the abundance of thy goodness that thou art good to those who sin against thee, and in the depth of thy goodness is hidden the reason for thy kindness. For although thou dost reward the good with goods, and the evil with evils, out of goodness, yet this by the concept of justice seems to demand. But when thou dost bestow goods on evil, and it is known that the supremely good had willed to do this, we wonder why the supremely just has been able to will this. O compassion, from what abundant sweetness and what sweet abundance does thou well forth to us. O boundless goodness of God, how passionately should sinners love thee! For thou savest the just, because justice goeth with them. But sinners, thou dost free by the authority of justice, those by the help of their desert. This, although their deserts oppose, those by acknowledging the goods thou hast granted, this by pardoning the evils thou hatest. O boundless goodness, which does so exceed all understanding, let the compassion come upon me, which proceeds from thy so great abundance. Let it flow upon me, for it wells forth from thee. Spare in mercy, and faint not in justice. 4. Though it is hard to understand how thy compassion is not inconsistent with thy justice, yet we must believe that it does not oppose justice at all, because it flows from goodness, which is no goodness without justice, nay, that it is in true harmony with justice. For if thou art compassionate only because thou art supremely good, and supremely good only because thou art supremely just, truly thou art compassionate even because thou art supremely just. Help me, just and compassionate God, whose like seek, help me to understand what I say. Truly, then, thou art compassionate, even because thou art just. Is then thy compassion born of thy justice? And dost thou spare the weak, therefore, out of justice? If this is true, my Lord, if this is true, teach me how it is. Is it because it is just, that thou shouldest be so good that thou canst not be conceived better, and that thou shouldest work so powerfully that thou canst not be conceived more powerful? For what can be more just than this? Assuredly, it could not be that the, thou shouldst be good only by requiting, retribuendo, and not by sparing, and that thou shouldst make good only those who are not good, and not the weak also. In this way, therefore, it is just that thou shouldst spare the weak, and make good souls of evil. Finally, what is not done justly ought not to be done, and what ought not to be done is done justly. Even then, if then thou dost not justly pity the weak, thou oughtest not to pity them. And if thou oughtest not to pity them, thou pitiest them unjustly. And if it is impious to suppose this, it is right to believe that thou justly pitiest the weak.